The Pueblo of Laguna is located 45 miles west of Albuquerque on Interstate 40. The reservation consists of approximately 500,000 acres of land situated in Cibola, Valencia, Bernalillo, and Sandoval counties.
My first thoughts when the virus in China, of course, I thought, I hope it never makes it here, but what are we going to do if it does make it here? The more we listened to it, the more we heard on the news, how fast this thing was moving, where it was going to different countries. It's going to make it here eventually. It worried me. It made me wonder at that point, what are we going to do? I wasn't the only one, thank God, because a lot of other people within our department, mainly the chief, said, let's get everybody together and let's start figuring out what we need to do just in case this virus does make it here. And that's when we started to formulate some type of plans.
You know, we typically get notifications from the state or other organizations that something's taking place, and so we always talk about it. And our initial team, we did speak about what our plans would be if necessary, but initially it was just a conversation. So when the virus entered the United States, that's when we really started to pay attention. Not that we weren't in initial, phases, but at this point we started to think about, okay, if this were to hit the state of New Mexico or potentially the Pueblo, we were starting to think about what would we need to do basically to mitigate the situation. So we started to gather our team together to figure out what our next steps were, what we're capable of doing, and what we thought was the next step for the Pueblo.
In 2020, we were on track to continue our collaborative efforts and work on behalf of our Pueblo. Then, the COVID-19 virus came into our nation, state, Pueblos, and sadly into our personal lives. Just about every Pueblo put in place protective orders, curfews, and no access closures to tribal lands. Many efforts were undertaken to combat, minimize, contain, and hopefully eliminate the exposure and spread of this silent enemy, the COVID-19 virus. The community spread that we experienced placed a strain on many of our families and communities, as well as our human and financial resources.
Prior to the virus reaching the Pueblo of Laguna, one of the things that was done, and it was to update the emergency operations plan. That particular plan is the guidebook that we use to respond to any kind of incidents or events that the Pueblo may face. And it just so happens that in February of 2020, that particular plan was brought to the Tribal Council for approval. I believe it was back in 2005 when the original plan was first adopted. So it did need some revision, it did need some updating. So we're lucky in that manner that that particular plan was approved, and that was what was used to prepare and take us throughout those steps we did as in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic.
And so I had an idea that, the EOC, what they were doing, which was a great job. They had a lot of resources, a lot of partnerships with the State Department of Health, all the other agencies that were dealing with COVID-19. I went down one day and I was introduced to all the staff, all the facility. I got to see the up close activity that they do day to day to provide all the services.
So when we started seeing a rise in cases across the Pueblo, it was kind of alarming. At that point, we hadn't really seen too many cases at one time. We had been able to early on get the message out about CSPs or COVID safe practices and what you need to do to keep yourself safe. We had a pretty good summer, and it seemed to be that we were doing really well. Shortly after that, we began seeing more cases here in the Pueblo, and it just kept rising. And I think in one day we probably got about 30 cases, if not more, in one day. And you got to remember, each case is one person that's been to the store, that's been to a birthday party, that's been to work, that's been to who knows where else. And each of those places has people that were exposed. So each person would necessitate sometimes, it could be anywhere from 5 to maybe 50 people being quarantined because of that exposure. So it really got busy really fast.
The virus really targeted our elders, and we look at our tribal communities. Our elders are really our gatekeepers to a lot of our information. They hold a lot of our cultural knowledge and practices, and so knowing that our public education at the time was really focused on keeping our elders safe. We did a lot of videos. We posted some billboards in all 6 villages. We even had little PSAs and put those out to community.
I think the entire vaccination program in the Pueblo of Laguna can be described as a significant success. This was one of the first mass vaccination efforts in the state of New Mexico, and was one of the first places to really vaccinate a large percentage of its population. I think the experiences that we had with the flu pod, as well as the community's acceptance of the vaccine, really helped as we worked through the complicated logistics of running a vaccination pod. And I think that once again, Laguna became a model for other areas to follow, and many of them have as a result. Many of the innovations that were first rolled out here in Laguna have been copied by other areas, tribal and non-tribal.
You know, I think if anything that we learned from this pandemic is that life's too short. Life's precious. You know, it can be taken from us anytime. There's lessons to be learned, to be taken from some of these things that happen in a bad way. So hopefully we're going to become more closer, we're going to be more stronger, we're going to be more resilient, and we're survivors, you know. But I have to give a shout out, I have to give a salute, take my hat off to the EOC, the Laguna Emergency Operations Center, all the staff. You know, I mean, I know that was a tough thing to be thrown into, but the whole team, you know who you are. And I say from the bottom of my heart, and on behalf of all our Pueblo members, including those non-members that lived and work here, you guys did an amazing job.
I think 3 words to describe the EOC would be
professionalism, its kindness and compassion.
Collaborative, dedicated, and tireless.
Effective, caring.
Organized, team-centered, prepared.
Professional, strong, perseverance.
Hardworking, dedication.
Love, support, encouragement.
Dedication, determination, and courage.
Tenacious, caring, and responsible.
One is courageous, The second one is resilient, and the third one is committed.
Reliable, adaptability, and committed.
Teamwork. Without that teamwork, this system wouldn't have worked. Our incident command would not have worked. And it wasn't just a word. It was truly a team. Compassion for one another, compassion for the community, and compassion for people's feelings. And I think the last would be love. Love for what they're doing, love for this community. I mean, you have to be part of it. You have to love what you're doing. You have to love the community that you're with. You can't just make it an 8-to-5 job. This is something that you had to be part of every single hour of the day, 7 days a week.
Thank you, Laguna, for protecting us. Thank you, Laguna, for protecting us. Thank you for protecting us.
Thank you to the men and women of the EOC for protecting our Pueblo way of life.